After testing 7 of the best ultra-high performance all-season tyres last year, one of the most common requests was to benchmark an ultra-high performance all-season tyre against an ultra-high performance summer tyre. And if I'm honest, I've been kicking myself for not having already done it at the time. After putting the feelers out, Continental kindly offered to help as they had just released the Continental ExtremeContact DWS06 and as this was too new to be in my previous test, I jumped at the chance because I really want to see what they've improved and how the tyre feels. Also, to give this test a little bit of extra depth, we'll also be benchmarking against not just the ultra high performance summer tyre, the ExtremeContact Sport, but also the brand new Continental ExtremeContact Force, which is a 200 treadwear track focused tyre designed with endurance in mind. As always, we'll be testing these tyres to the max in the dry, the wet, and even looking at noise and comfort, which is all really awesome. Let's get on with testing. We're going to start the day with wet handling, and each test is going to be run in the same order: the ultra high performance all season tyre, the summer tyre, then the 200 treadwear track tyre. Starting the day with the DWS06 the ultra high performance all season tyre. This tyre, as the first tyre on test in the wet, really surprised me. I was very impressed with the levels of grip and the levels of feedback through the wheel, because that's often something you do lose with an ultra high performance all season tyre, any sort of all season tyre. You lose a bit of that steering response, but as the first tyre on test, I thought it was fantastic. The car had a slight hint of understeer, which is generally what you want for road driving, especially in the wet, and there was very little problems with hydroplaning, so all round impressive experience. The lap time was a 1:12.2. Moving on to the summer tyre, that brought exactly what I expected, and it was my favourite tyre. It was 2.1 seconds a lap faster overall, but it just gave you a little bit more adjustability, a little bit more turning, a little bit more brakes. You just kind of like built on it everywhere in progressive steps, which was really nice, and it allowed you to have a little bit of play at the back of the car, so you could get a little bit of oversteer, which helped you around the lap and put a smile on your face. Like I said, that was 2.1 seconds a lap quicker, which is fairly respectable around this kind of track. As for the 200 treadwear track tyre, these types of tyres in the wet is often where the enjoyment drops out. It sounds like it would be a fun experience, but often it's not, because you're just hydroplaning everywhere and scared that next time you touch the brakes, nothing's going to happen, you're going to go straight. But this Continental ExtremeContact Force was very impressive for its category of tyre. Probably helped by two things. The water depth at Continental's test track is very low. They've done a very good job of having an even, low, uniform surface, and this tyre, for a 200 treadwear track tyre, does have surprisingly large water grooves, so it's definitely been designed with wet in mind, perhaps more than some of its competitors. However, it was more of an experience. There definitely was what I felt like micro hydroplaning, so at points you were kind of like skipping across the surface. Nothing scary or drastic, but you just knew it was there, and that reflected in the time, which was pretty much the same as the ultra high performance all season tyre, 10th slower I think. But again, it was a harder tyre to drive, and I think we're going to see a little bit more of the negative aspects of the 200 treadwear track tyre in the hydroplaning data, which I'll put on screen now.
The straight aquaplaning data confirmed what I felt on track. The Continental ExtremeContact Sport and DWS06 were extremely close, and while the ExtremeContact Force was a step behind, it was surprisingly good for its category of tyre. Wet braking confirmed the ExtremeContact Sport's wet grip advantage, stopping the car in just 28.8 metres from 50 miles an hour on a high grip wet surface.
Dry handling, and at over 100 degrees Fahrenheit track temperature, this is where I expected the ultra high performance all season tyre to struggle a little bit more, as no compound that's designed to work well and remain elastic at freezing temperatures and wintry conditions can deal with this sort of high temperature track abuse, as well as a tyre compound that doesn't have to deal with the winter. And while there was some disadvantage to the ultra high performance all season tyre, it was impressively less than I believed. The main difference opposed to the lap time, which was only about 1.5%, was subjectiveness. What the summer tyre brought over the ultra high performance all season tyre was this: braking and steering. It was just a little bit sharper to react, a little bit more stable. It dug in a little bit more on the brakes, and the problem you have with any tyre ultra high performance all season winter tyre that's designed to work in colder temperatures and get grip in snow is they have a blocky tread pattern, right? You can see that the tread pattern is squared off blocky as opposed to the longitudinal grip of the summer tyre. And that tread pattern can move around under the car under extreme cornering forces, and that's what you feel when you're driving quickly. So while the ultra high performance tyre definitely isn't the best tyre for this kind of track use, it actually took it surprisingly well, and it's not a tyre that's often going to get used on track, so we can't knock it down too much for that. If the difference between the ultra high performance all season tyre and the summer tyre was say 1 point, the difference between the summer tyre and the 200 treadwear tyre was 3 or 4 points. My gosh, once that tyre was warm and it got up to temperature and you got kind of used to the extra grip, the thing just connected you with the road almost telepathically. You could think about going around the corner and then the car was going around the corner, which is exactly what you want from this sort of tyre. The steering response had improved dramatically. It was tiny on center, tiny movements was having the car moving quickly, which is what you want. The grip was really impressive, especially in the higher speed corners. That's where it was most noticeable, because you could really lean on the tyre laterally and you just had that stability and confidence to really push on. I did a number of laps, there was no degradation in heat. The tyre looked brand new after like a session, so I'm going to try and do a little bit more laps in, but it was exactly what you want for like a track tyre. Unsurprisingly, the conclusion from this is if you're going to use a tyre on track, the tyre that's designed the most for track is best. But like I say, it was nearly 3 seconds faster than the summer tyre, which is quite a significant advantage, but it's not the time that I really care about. And honestly, unless you're racing, I don't think you should really care about time too. This 200 treadwear track category, it's faster than a road tyre, we all know this, but what you want is a tyre for track days. You want a tyre that gives you this driving enjoyment and a tyre that manages heat and wears well. Because I know they're all 200 treadwear track tyres in the 200 treadwear category, but they all have slightly different philosophies, and some of them perhaps are slightly quicker over a single lap, but what you want is a tyre that will last you a full day on track without too much heat degradation. And from my initial impressions, this Continental Force Contact does that really well, but I will be testing it in the future against other tyres in the category. Noise and comfort, I won't spend long on this. For noise, we do coast down tests on various different surfaces, and honestly, I couldn't really hear any difference between the ultra high performance all season and the summer tyre. The track tyre naturally did have a little bit more tread noise, a little bit more rumble in the cabin, but honestly it wasn't offensive, so you're not going to notice it like some 200 treadwear tyres that sound like an air raid siren going off. As for comfort, again, it's a bit of a logical progression. The DWS06 Plus, the ultra high performance all season over these bumps, just rounded everything off just a little bit better. It was an honest tyre, didn't have any sort of secondary movement, and I would say it has good levels of comfort. Let's call that 10 out of 10. The ultra high performance summer tyre, the ExtremeContact Sport, now this was very close. It did a very good job of rounding everything out and just smoothing off the bumps, but it wasn't quite up there with the all season. So if the all season was a 10, this would be a 9 in comfort, and if they're both 10s in noises. As for the 200 treadwear track tyre, that did less of a job of rounding everything out. In fact, it probably squared it out. It was noticeably less comfortable. You got more of the impact through into the car and the cabin, but for that kind of tyre, for a 200 treadwear tyre that you're probably going to use on track, who really cares? The payback from that is this, the steering response and everything you want from that tyre. So that's how they rule out. We've got a 10 out of 10 in comfort, a 10 out of 10 in noise for the all season, a 10 out of 10 in noise, and a maybe 9 out of 10 in comfort for the summer tyre, and then maybe a 7 out of 10 in noise and comfort for the track tyre. So that's the spread. What an interesting test. What have we actually learned? Firstly, the ultra high performance all season tyre is surprisingly capable in the dry and wet, even at these crazy hot temperatures we've been testing at here in Texas. I mean, look at my sweat. These conditions might be out the tyre's ideal test conditions and definitely brings the advantage towards the summer tyre and the 200 treadwear tyre, but the tyre was stable, good to drive on. And let's not forget, while it was around 2% behind in the dry and wet handling, I have data from an ultra high performance all season tyre versus a summer tyre in the snow for another video coming soon. Please subscribe. And the difference in snow handling isn't 2%, it's over 60%. And the difference in traction and braking is over 200%. This DWS06 Plus is the only tyre here you'll have any ability in the snow with, which makes its performance in the dry and wet mega impressive to me. As for the ultra high performance summer tyre, the ExtremeContact Sport did exactly what I expected of it. It was a fun tyre to drive, my favourite in the wet with the fastest lap time, and while it wasn't a match for the ExtremeContact Force in the dry, this is the type of tyre you can use on the road in your performance car year round, assuming you don't have too aggressive a winter. As for the 200 treadwear ExtremeContact Force, wow, this tyre surpassed all my expectations in the wet, and while it wasn't up to much in hydroplaning tests compared to the summer and all season tyres, it did feel really impressive for its type of tyre in the wet. In the dry, it brought the car alive, feeling super agile, responsive, and I can't wait to test this against other 200 treadwear tyres in the future. Continental reliably informed me that this tyre was developed with endurance racing in mind, so it should be more consistent over a long stint on track and potentially even outlast many of its competitors. Tests coming soon. So which of the three types of tyre is best for you? Well, that's down to your own personal situation and location. If you live in a climate that has a winter and you want to run a single tyre year round, the DWS06 Plus is the only choice. Sure, I probably wouldn't do hardcore track running with it, but for a sporty drive, it's plenty fine. And while it did have a slight disadvantage in the dry and wet to the ultra high performance tyre, that gap will close as the temperature drops, and eventually that will actually reverse, especially in the wet come winter. The ultra high performance tyre, like the ExtremeContact Sport, certainly can be a year-round choice as long as you don't see snow on aggressive winter, as it's excellent in the dry and wet and will happily take the occasional track day. It brings extra grip and especially subjective handling over the ultra high performance all season tyre, and without much reduction in comfort or noise. Summer tyres are great until things start getting wintry, and it's around 45 degrees Fahrenheit where the crossover point is, so keep that in mind. As for the 200 trackwear tyre, ignore the grip advantage in the dry, which was large. It was pure driving enjoyment that I love. This tyre makes the car feel more direct, more responsive, and you feel more connected to the road, which is exactly what you want. But the disadvantages are obvious. This type of tyre should not be used year round on a daily driver. And even with its remarkably strong performance in the wet for its category, standing water is going to be an issue. Cold temperatures are going to be an issue because it needs a bit of temperature, and naturally it won't have as much treadwear for these three tyres. So there you go. The choice is yours. Which is best for you? Make your own choice. Thank you once again to Continental Tyres for supporting this test. Their DWS06 Plus does feel like a step over the DWS06, so I'm looking forward to getting this in my next ultra high performance all season tyre test. This ExtremeContact Force, mighty impressive in the wet, and all the dry running I've done, it seems remarkably stable and it seems to be wearing extremely well. So at some point I will get this in a 200 treadwear track day shootout. Perhaps not this year because it's a bit too late, but hopefully next year. If you have any questions or comments, please ask below. If you've enjoyed the video, hit like, and as always, safe motoring. And I've got to give up because I'm sweating buckets.